So Demeulemeester is back in fashion, and of course everyone knows this is something that I definitely have to talk about. So as I don't really like to make too many assumptions, for background on who Demeulemeester is, and I'm going to start calling her Andy so I don't start confusing people. Andy is a member of a famous Belgian fashion group called the Antwerp Six. The 6 designers that are called the Antwerp Six actually went to the same school, the Royal Academy of Fine Arts in Antwerp, in the 80s. And they also went to London Fashion Week to showcase their collections. A lot of the English press didn't know how to pronounce their names. They just referred to them as the Antwerp Six. Now there's more to the story. And if you want to know more about the story, I have actually made a deeper video on who the Antwerp Six are. So I'd say definitely check that video out, and it will give better context on who Andy is. Aesthetically, when you look at a lot of Andy's work, it's very grunge and there's a lot of asymmetry. One of her early inspiration points is Patti Smith, and you can see this in sort of the grunge rocker aesthetic of her early clothing. When you look at the colours, a lot of the colours are very monotonous, very black or very white. But as her brand kind of developed, the colour palette changed and we started to see different colours like cream being used, or reds and browns. She also had very interesting inspiration points when you look at a lot of her work. When I think of her collections, I think of Fall Winter 1992, which was a very, very interesting collection, and it challenged gender norms when it wasn't really popular to be, you know, androgynous and those sort of things. And in this collection, she had the idea to imagine what the world would be like if in the Edwardian times what the men wore is actually what women wore. So she basically put women in Edwardian British men's clothing, and that was what the Fall Winter 1992 collection was inspired by, which is such an interesting thing. And by 2013, she stepped down from her brand and left it in the hands of a French designer called Sébastien Munier. Now, to talk about Sébastien actually had worked at the brand for a few years before Andy left, and Andy actually specifically hired him because she was looking for someone who would take over. So she trained him. He eventually became head of menswear and was in charge of doing the menswear collections before she stepped down in 2013 and he became the full creative director. In many interviews, she talks about the reason why she left her brand, and one of the main reasons is just that she felt like she had achieved everything that she set out to achieve in fashion, as well as the fact that it started to become exhausting and it very much limited her time for anything else. And she just felt like she needed a break from fashion and she needed to explore different opportunities in the creative space. So when it comes to Sébastien Munier, Sébastien had a very different aesthetic to Demeulemeester. Very, very different. He was more romantic. I think he used a lot more colours, he was a bit more sensual, he used softer fabrics, less aggressive fabrics. The colours he would use were crazy, like purples or bright greens or blues. He was very, very more open with using different colours compared to Andy herself. And while a lot of collections did take inspiration points from his own viewpoint, he also did reference her work a lot. If you think of collections like the Spring Summer 20 menswear collection, which was inspired by the Antwerp docks, and Sébastien Munier was really looking at all the different aspects, whether we're talking about the sailors, the fishermen, and different aspects to that. This is a very similar inspiration point to the Demeulemeester Spring Summer 1992 collection, which also took a very similar inspiration point, but he put his own spin on it. However, last year there was kind of a lot of drama around the brand. First of all, Sébastien Munier stepped down and everyone was a bit confused on what the future of the brand was. Was it going to close down? Because it was very clear that the brand was going through a lot of financial difficulties. There were many issues with the brand. The quality definitely went down drastically. The quality control was terrible. And I say something because I own a lot of pieces from the brand, and I say that I can fit into anything from a size small to a size double extra large in Andy. And I think the reason is they just don't, it's almost like they just attach random labels to any piece, because I don't see how I can fit in a small but fit in an XL. So there are clearly many issues with the brand, and after Sébastien Munier stepped down, news came out that Claudio Antonioli bought the brand. When this happened, I did actually make a video on what I think will be the future of the brand, so you can definitely check that out because it gives even more context on the house of Demeulemeester. So of course we hadn't heard anything about Demeulemeester, the woman, for a while after she stepped down from her brand. But 2 years ago, she actually came out and said that she was going to start making homeware. And she makes it in collaboration with Serax, which is a company that specializes in making homeware goods, leather goods, those sort of things. And they do collaborate with a lot of fashion designers. And she's been making things like lamps, plates, those sort of things. And they're quite interesting, and I really like the designs that she creates with homeware. And it's also very interesting considering she always said that she wanted to explore different mediums of being creative. And I just wasn't expecting that that was the direction she was going to take. And when the news broke that Antonioli had bought the brand, there were many different other news sources saying that he was working closely with the family, which, with further interviews, that is definitely true. Antonioli has said in interviews that he was actually a fan of the Demeulemeester brand, and when he heard that it was available for sale and that it was going through financial struggles, he sort of saw it as an opportunity to work on it as a project, to build a brand that he loves. And so I'm really happy that he wants to relaunch the brand the right way. He's been working with the family and of course Andy herself to make sure that he doesn't do anything that is against the type of thing that she would do or against her aesthetic. However, one criticism I do have, and this is actually insider information that I'm talking about now, but one thing that they did was they pulled a lot of their clothing from a lot of stores that they stock in, because one thing that Claudio wanted to do was he wanted to take charge of the clothing and open new Demeulemeester stores and sort of sell more direct to consumer, so that they can take control of their marketing and how they're going to communicate to their consumers. So now you're really only going to see a lot of the stuff in Andy's store specifically, and he wants to make more stores all around Europe. And while that's good, he's kind of almost destroyed a lot of his relationship with the people that used to love Andy and the people that have been stocking it for years and supported the brand, even when it was going through bad financial times. So I'm not sure, I don't commend that he's sort of messed up relationships with a lot of stockists. And so if stocking it in stores doesn't work, then there's going to be a huge problem financially for the brand, considering he's kind of burned a lot of bridges. And all of that brings us to the current day, with Andy returning to fashion, kind of, in a way. Recently, it was announced that the flagship store will be reopening in Antwerp on the 2nd of September. So that is on Thursday, literally 2 days from now. So I'm looking forward to that because I will be in Antwerp next month. So I'm definitely going to go into that store. And recently it has been announced that in the store, a lot of Andy furniture will be made by her. And of course, she will also display a lot of pieces from the Demeulemeester Serax brand, like the homeware, the lamps, the plates, the glasses, the cups. But I think what I'm looking forward to more than all the other stuff is they are working on a new fragrance for the brand, which I will find very interesting. And I'm really looking forward to how that's going to smell. Because normally when a lot of these sort of avant-garde brands make things like perfume, the smell is normally inspired by a time period or a feeling, rather than just, say, a Tom Ford that's supposed to smell nice and make you feel sexy. If you look at Margiela fragrances, they're like jazz club. You're supposed to actually feel like you're in a jazz club. And it's supposed to smell like that, and it gives that effect. So I find those sort of things very interesting. Shout out to High Fashion Talk, who did a very good post about this on Instagram, and some of the information is definitely from the Instagram post that they made, as well as a lot of people just DMing me a lot of information. Normally when things happen with this brand, because it's one of my favorite brands and people know that, people just always send me information. And when this news broke, everyone was like, have you seen this? So that is something I do like. And yeah, I'm ultimately just happy to see Demeulemeester involved with the brand again, especially openly and in public, because of course she has been working with Antonioli behind the scenes. Just in any capacity, I just really like it, because it means that the brand is not going to deviate from what it stands for. So yeah, that is basically the fashion news on Andy. I'm a big fan of the brand. As everyone knows, it's one of my favorite brands. I own so many pieces from the brand at this point. They should probably sponsor me, even though it's not the type of brand that sponsors people. They're too avant-garde for that. But yeah, I can even show you some of my pieces. Wait 1 sec, let me get some. Okay, so this is an example of one of the pieces I own from the brand. Some of you might have seen it. This is a hat from the Fall Winter 19 collection. I actually wear it quite a lot, more so in the summer, even though it is like kind of like a wool material, because I like wearing it with bright colors, and I don't like wearing bright colors in the winter. I don't know why. It's just a thing that I do. But yeah, it's definitely a hat I really love. It's also from a women's wear collection, which shows how androgynous and unisex a lot of their stuff is.